is that I don't believe that she has culpability in certain ways. Like, I understand that she was conditioned to be exactly what she is. That
Mhm.
makes sense to me. But the fact that she won't go and get the help, nor does she feel that she really needs the help, that's where I have a problem. It's everything after the murder that I actually have
Yes.
a problem with. Um, Everything leading up to the murder and even the murder, I can understand and explain based on what she was being subjected to day in, day out, day in, day out. But like you said, she does have, she was benefiting from it. And I truly believe that it was kind of like one of those things where you're convinced that, I think DeeDee had her convinced that if she turned her in, she would be responsible just as much as DeeDee was. And I don't think that's true, but I think that's what she had her convinced,
Hmm.
but now the thing is DeeDee is gone and she is still making the same choices.
Yes.
That's the thing that I have a problem with. Yes, you can say that, yes, DeeDee supposedly had a power of attorney. Well, if you look at the power of attorney, you understand that the power of attorney was actually only for medical stuff, but Gypsy didn't know that. And she also didn't know that the power of attorney was actually fake either. So of course, I really do believe that I talked about this with Titania the other night, in the fact of that I don't think that the murder is so shocking, because I do believe that in Gypsy's mind, it was never going to end. And I really don't think it would have ended if she had just left, unless she left with somebody who was like, I know how to hide you for the rest of your life. You're going to change your name. You're never going to pop up again ever anywhere where she will find you. Then that would have been the only way for her to actually leave without killing her mom. But because of who she was with,
Hmm.
that was not an option. He couldn't protect her and hide her forever. And if she'd gone to her dad, GD would have just made trouble there. So I do believe that the murder, while unfortunate and sad, I do believe that for her, with what she had at the time, that was her only option. Now, like I said, if she'd met somebody who had, resources to, cart her off to some foreign country somewhere and build a life, and she would have escaped her, then that would be totally different. But it wasn't what she had. She had a guy who had, just about as much of a sheltered life as she did, and was just as messed up from what his upbringing was, which is why I've had a lot of change of heart on him.
Hmm.
When I originally saw this case, like the only thing I could see about him was the vicious nature in which he committed that act, and that there was no reason for him to commit an act that viciously. And I know that people try to say that maybe the viciousness came from her and she was stabbing, but there's absolutely no evidence for that. In fact, the evidence supports completely the opposite. So for me, that was what was the big thing, was just the fact that he had um he had done, such a vicious, violent act for absolutely really no reason. Because you can't say that that's because he thought he was in love and saving his girl. That's 4 stabs, I'm done, I'm out. That's not sawing on one side of her head, then sawing on another side of her head and stabbing her 17 times. I
Well,
mean,
right. And we don't know whether the years of online relationship, if Gypsy had been talking to him over the phone, not the text messages, but
mhm,
actual voice, if
mhm,
she'd been, continuing to lie to him
right.
and about, exaggerating the abuse,
Abuse, right.
causing him to have those kind of pent up emotions about it
Right. Right. Well,
with
I
his,
absolutely do believe
oh,
that, but I also believe that his violence, in my opinion, based on what I have right now. Now, if I had all the Facebook messages and all the stuff on Christian dating for free and all the phone calls and all that, if I had all that, then maybe it would be different. But I truly believe that it's from his. I think he absolutely has mental problems. Is it
definitely.
DID? Absolutely not. But is it mental problems? Absolutely. He's obviously got some rage, and he's got a rape in his mind, and all those different things that comes from a certain specific place.
Hmm.
um but with our series, one of the things that we're doing with all of this is looking at what creates a murderer. you know um that's why the series is called Murder by Design, and by proxy is season 1. You know, it took us a long time to figure out what we wanted to do with the series as a whole. And that was one of the things that Heather and I sat down and talked about was, well, beyond just bringing awareness to specific things, what are we doing here? And for me, it's always been with true crime, it's always been about the why and the how, and not necessarily the what, you know?
Yes.
And so I believe that he had a neglected childhood. I mean, you can see that classically because of what his mother has done to him now. I mean, she's abandoned him.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I mean, if Ted Bundy's mom can stick around, I don't understand why she can't.
Yeah.
You know, especially after watching her interview where she's like, he is a child, he has a brain of a 15-year-old. They said he'd never progressed. He's never been violent. I don't understand where this is coming from. And then for her to just turn and be like,
Yeah.
you know, that's heartbreaking for me as a mother. I cannot for the life of me think that even if my children were to do something like this, that I would just turn my back on them. He needs support more than ever now. And, you know, I used to think that he didn't. I used to think that, why does he deserve support? He's done this horrible thing. But truthfully, I mean, the more and more I've gotten into it and the more and more I've seen not only the manipulation from Gypsy, and I do believe she's very manipulative,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that he manipulated her just as much as she manipulated him. I don't think that either one of them has any problem with manipulation whatsoever, you know, like doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that there obviously had to be something there. You know, you're not born a murderer. It is created by whatever is going
Yes.
on. And the fact that he got no mental health help, and, you know, a mother who thinks that her son is that severely far down on the spectrum of autism, allowing her son to just get on a bus for 20 hours one way and being like, okay, and not being like concerned about it. Or, you know, even if he got on the bus and was like, I am absolutely getting on this bus. Well, yeah, son, you're okay. You are an adult. You can go. There's no way that I wouldn't have been blowing up his phone, or I would have got in my car and followed him, or I would have been like, you know what, son, if you really have to go, let's go. I'll drive you, you know?
Well, right. And to him come back with this girl who she really knows nothing about and say, okay, yep, you can live here.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
sure. That's normal.
Right.
And being from Wisconsin, knowing where his family lives, where he went to school, and about the mental health help in Wisconsin, and it's getting better, but his school, it was not a very well school in terms of high achieving. I think they really just pushed him through on the lowest possible scale to just move him on versus actual help. And like I said back in a few videos ago, how I think this whole case would have been different had Gypsy just killed her mom. If Gypsy had just done it, I don't think she would have really had any jail time whatsoever. Nick wouldn't have been involved, and it would have just moved on. Whether Gypsy says, oh, she doesn't like blood, okay, well, there are other options besides stabbing somebody to death.
And she knew those options, obviously, because she knew about her mother poisoning her stepmother, her stepmother supposedly, you know, so, you know, she was poisoning Miss Laura, and that's not the only accusation of that. That's why I do believe that happened, because it's not just that they're not the only people who claim that, the Petries. There are other families that I've spoken with that have had a relationship with DeeDee, that it was a pattern and something that they thought happened to their mother as well. So it you know, so she obviously knew about things like that, and they looked up all those things. So there is ways that she could have, you know, poisoned her mom. She could have done all kinds of different things that would have been, you know, taken her out herself. But I don't think Gypsy wanted to. And I still truly don't believe that she had a real clear understanding of finality. Like,
definitely. And with DeeDee having type 2 diabetes, being on insulin, if insulin death is very common.
Yeah.
If
absolutely.
Gypsy wanted to kill her mom herself, without any symptoms, any blood or anything, draw up way too much insulin.
Yep.
And kill her.
Put her mom into a coma and let her go. I mean, I've talked about it myself with my own mom, and the fact that my mom, you know, and I had a a hard relationship for me growing up. My mother was very sick. She was on a lot of medication that made her volatile, angry. She was abusive. I loved my mom dearly. She was an amazing grandmother later in life as she understood, and she even apologized for a lot of the things that she had done to me as a kid. She's like, I didn't mean to do those things. And I know, Mom, I know you never meant to. I never held it against her. But like I've said, there were times that I had stood and thought about, should I call 911 or not? Because my mom's in another coma because of the state of what you said. She took too much insulin and didn't eat and didn't do what she was supposed to do. And to work the insulin out of her body like it's supposed to naturally progress through. And if you don't, if that happens, you take too much, you go into this coma,
Yep.
and you can watch a person slip into it. Like my mother would start with the reaction, which is what happens. She's angry, she's throwing things, she's not making sense,
Mhm.
and I would try to get the sugar into her and everything and all of that. But then if you don't do anything and they just sit there, they can slowly just pass
Yep.
away. And
Right, your
that's
blood
it.
sugar drops below 70, below 60.
Right. And then that's it. Right.
Right, below 60, your brain loses oxygen,
Yep.
and
Yeah.
you just blood sugar drops, you
And
get
she
brain
just,
damage, you
yeah.
slip away.
So she could have, while her mother was asleep, she could have easily, like you said, drawn an entire thing of and just one shot, and her mother would have never woke up. She would have just passed in her sleep, and then that would have been it. And there would have been no charges, like you said, because it could have just been, she drew too, I'm sorry, my nose is really itchy today. She drew too much insulin, and I don't know what happened. This is the same thing that we thought would happen to DeeDee or to Gypsy as well, though, because at any point in time, DeeDee could have easily overdosed her on purpose, and she would, and I believe that that's where it was going towards, was that would have happened that year. And I mean, so yeah, I agree with you that there were other ways besides Nicholas doing it. I think Gypsy didn't want that on her hands.
Yeah.
I also think that I think she struggled with it, and I think so. Dang it, hold on. I think that she struggled with it, and so she thought that if she didn't necessarily have to do it, that somehow I truly believe that somehow gave her a sense of peace in it, of that it wasn't necessarily her. Well, it's not me. I'm not doing it,
Yeah, that's guilt for the rest of her life.
Right. And I'm not saying that she doesn't feel guilt. I do think she does feel some remorse in some ways, but I also just feel like she's not capable of really connecting to anybody based on what's happened to her. She's not capable of realizing that she has these issues. I don't even think, like we've all talked about her attention-seeking behavior. I don't even think that she knows that she has attention-seeking behavior. I think she really does when she says, okay, I want my privacy. I think she really thinks that that's what she's feeling. But yet then everybody starts to give her that privacy, and what happens? We see another letter come out, or she breaks up with Ken and then gets right back together with Ken. And I think that, she didn't want her stepmom talking to me anymore. So what'd she tell her? Well, you're uninvited to the wedding if you're going to keep talking fancy and working with by proxy. And then the second that Christy was like, okay, well then I'm out, which I totally understand that. Now she's like, oh, we're all good. You're back. The wedding's back on and you're coming back to the wedding. Like she doesn't even understand that she's in this pattern of attention-seeking behavior.
Right. It's who she is. And she didn't get the chance. And like, I'm going to talk about answer these questions.
Yeah.
Gypsy didn't have the formal education and the proper socialization to really understand who she is, about being a person. She's a product of her environment. And unfortunately, at this point, without help, this is who she's going to be. And even if she does get help, she's not going to be like everybody else. She'll
never be. And this is where, when I first started off, I was talking always about getting her out of prison early. I still believe in some ways either she should not have gone to prison because all that was going to do was solidify this really terrible behavior, because it puts her in an environment that she has to survive against other people that are already displaying these types of behaviors. And so naturally those behaviors are going to continue in prison, because that's just what she has to do to survive. So sending her to prison was not a great option, but putting her in a mental health institution, obviously with what the mental health institutions for criminals, that's not a good option, or letting her go wasn't a good option either, because it basically tells her that she has no consequences. It's okay what you did, which it's not. Nothing justifies what she did. Even with, like I've said, many other kids have suffered terribly worse than she has, didn't take the road she did. It doesn't mean that that's any less of minimizing what she went through in any way, shape, or form. It's just that she made a choice, and that was her choice. But I don't feel that keeping her in prison is helping her in any way, shape, or form, except to make things worse. And that was why I was saying that, what is the benefit of having her in there? It's not doing anything. It's not helping society any. It's certainly not helping her any,
Right. If it had been court-ordered mandatory therapy every day or
Absolutely.
4 times a week, and seeing proper psychiatrists and therapists and advocates for what she's went through, and court-ordered mandatory is definitely a thing. And if that had happened and she, was forced to, but made to live with Christy and Rod, and either had like a monitoring bracelet that would, she had to stay in that area for a certain amount of time.
Right.
I think that would have been much more beneficial to her.
Yeah. And to society, in my opinion, because
there's no point.
I don't see her coming out and living a productive, happy life. And that was one of the things, talking to the expert that we did, when Titania asked her the question about rehabilitation for the abused, not for the abuser, but the abused. And her answer being, no one that I've seen that has sustained a lengthy amount of this type of behavior have I ever seen go on to not have severe problems and have issues with the things that we're seeing that Gypsy has, attention-seeking behavior, manipulation, lying, all the different things. She said that's all very classic. It's completely 100% classic of, the fictitious disorder imposed upon another, which was why what she believes it doesn't even belong in the DSM-5, because it's not really a mental disorder. It is child abuse, and it's a severe form of child abuse, and it doesn't just extend to the child, it extends to everyone that's around. So Christy and Rod have been conditioned, her aunts and uncles have been conditioned, her cousins have been conditioned, they've all been conditioned. And you know what? It's going to continue this behavior. And in a sense, I don't think that Christy is malicious. I don't think she even realizes what she's doing is not helping either. But she has kind of taken on this step of this role of, she's just using it to do the things that she's doing. And whether I think that's financial gain for her, or if she's just enjoying being the center of attention, or if she really does truly feel like she's doing something that's helping, it's not helping in any way, shape, or form. I don't hate Christy. I don't understand Christy. But I don't understand any of them, because it's absolutely unbelievable for anybody to understand this. Even experts don't understand what causes it, why they do it, what, there's no definition as to why, and why everybody behaves the way they do. But it is true that, I was thinking about, I talked to an attorney friend of mine about a subject about molestation in families, and how many families, they all work to hide it because they just don't want to accept it. It's the same kind of thing. It's that same behavior that no one wants to accept their role in this, and that's, and who would want to, you can't admit to yourself that you allowed this to happen to a child, much less your child,
Right. Like I'm glad you mentioned that, because I don't think I've mentioned it before. On YouTube, there's a documentary called Just Melvin, Just Evil. And it's a wonderful documentary into the look of child abuse, child molestation, and how this grandfather molested like 10 plus girls out of his ex-wives' kids, his own kids, his nieces and nephews, his cousins,
right,
and how the whole family just brushed it under the rug, and it just went on to happen, and it is so sad. So if anybody's interested in how these patterns form in families and how families react to these kind of things, Just Melvin, Just Evil, free on YouTube. I think it's fascinating.
I think I will watch that one, definitely. But and just like when it came out so naturally in the court case. It came out so extremely naturally where she said, they asked her, and we talked about this on the briefing of our podcast the other day that we're putting together, and that's the Good Wives Guide to True Crime. Our podcast, we taped our trailer the other day. We're very excited about it. It was a lot of fun. But one of the things we talked about in there was we were reading the transcripts, and I had read them, but I don't think I ever sat and really, really analyzed her testimony in the way that I look at it now based on what the evidence that I have. I'd looked at it before and I thought, well, she just finally, she told the truth and she decided to own it all. But then in a way, no, because I think she still put it back on Nick. And I think he puts it on her and she puts it on him. But one of the things she said was, is her explanation for what she had said to Nick was, well, did you tell him that you could walk? And she said, yeah, I did. And he said, well, how, she was asking about why did people give her money for being in the wheelchair and all these different things. She said, because they felt sorry for us. They believed the lies. They believed the fraud. And, he's like, well, when did you know? He started asking her when was she, and she goes, well, I always knew I could walk. Like, and it was just so simple. It wasn't even a thought process. Like if she was just came out of her mouth, which, and Colleen has some information about that is in medical wise is why I bring it up, but that's truth. She always knew she could walk. She always knew she could walk. She always knew she could hear. She always knew she didn't have problems with her eyes. Those are things that she did know. And again, yes, it is a pattern inside of, the fictitious disorder imposed upon another, that they're conditioned to lie and do these things, and that's the only life they know and they think it's normal. But it also says that she knew,
She knew.
And
yeah. But so getting into, we did have some questions that were asked on our different pages. And so I just kind of wanted to go over them so that way that you are being heard and we are willing to answer any of your questions. So I'm just going to go through those.
Yeah.
And so one of the questions was that me and you, Fancy, we've talked about all the time. If DeeDee's shaved Gypsy's head, claiming it was due to leukemia, I wonder why Gypsy never questioned that. And so my opinion on this was that I believe Gypsy was never really educated regarding side effects of medications or medical procedures, including chemotherapy and radiation.
Right. She thought she was taking a pill for chemotherapy, like, just and it was just a random, like vitamin. It was a vitamin.
And I think she did not get the laptop and iPad until she was much older.
Right.
And it went from that she had cancer when she was a young child, around 5. So I believe that for her younger years, she kind of just blindly followed whatever her mother told her regarding any of her conditions. And then Gypsy was removed from formal education in elementary school by DeeDee. So she was isolated, never had strangers who weren't in the medical profession question that long length of time.
Right.
And that she would be undergoing treatment. Because the strangers that she meets, Comic-Con and Disney, whatever, they're not going to say, oh, when did you have cancer? If they're just said, she has cancer. That's just okay.
However, the thing that I have the worst time reconciling with that is two things, actually. One, I don't understand the neighbors. Like, it totally makes no sense to me why the neighbors never questioned that. Like, and I just think about all the reasons why, and maybe they did, maybe we just don't know that they did, but they never did anything about it. That's for darn sure. They just accepted it. And from what I've seen from everybody that's been interviewed, they just accepted everything that DeeDee said, which I just don't get. Like, if there was a kid in my neighborhood for 7 to 10 years, had a shaved head and was supposedly having cancer, that's not how cancer works. You either get better or you die. And that's the reality of the situation. So I don't understand how it was meant to carry on. Now, the doctors is what really confuses me the most, because I don't think that they thought she had cancer the entire time. Because if you look at the files, it definitely says she had cancer at 5 or she had cancer, da 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 da. But is there a reason that they would have believed, Colleen, that there was a reason for her head to be shaved all the time?
So I think that as Gypsy became more aware of the different conditions that she did not actually have, I think she was pressured to keep quiet. And that's kind of how she started seeking boyfriends over the internet, because she was seeking some sort of relationship outside of her mother. In regards to the doctors, that thinning hair and bald patches can occur with all the different medications that she was on.
Okay.
So I believe that many of the physicians took it as, we're just keeping her head shaved so that way she doesn't have these bald patches all over her head. And those doctors were given different excuses for the shaved head.
Okay, that makes sense.
Versus having, chemo for 20 years.
Right.
I think it was medication side effects was the excuse doctors were given. And maybe the neighbors were given that excuse as well.
Okay. Yeah, so that makes sense. I guess that makes more sense to me now that you think about it that way. Maybe it was because of explained as being part of the, medications and things like that. That makes much more sense to me. Although I just think about the things that have been said by the different neighbors and stuff. And I think they really, truly believe she still had leukemia and things. And I don't know. I don't understand. Maybe they're just not educated enough. And it's not to say that they're dumb or anything. I'm just saying not educated enough. I happen to be pretty educated in the medical field. Sorry, excuse me. I have a guest. This is Rowdy. Hello. Say hi. Yeah, he loves to sit next to me in my chair. That's where he sits all day long. I think that I have a lot of understanding of the medical field, even though I'm not trained in the medical field, just because I was around it my whole life with my mother. So, because my mom was so sick, I went to all the doctor's appointments because I was an only child. So I went with her everywhere, and so I heard all the different things. And I guess for me, my mother taught me to question everything, even things doctors say to you. That was one of the things my mother told me from a very young age was, don't ever accept anything that a doctor tells you. If you don't think that it makes any sense to you, keep asking questions until you get the right answers. And my mom would go in with lists of questions. She would go in with an entire list of questions and she would not leave that room until she got those answers. And if they tried to say, well, blah, 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 nope, I need this answer. I need to know. Well, ma'am, that's not what, nope, I need this answer. And so I guess maybe for me, I was taught to question, but if you're not, I guess, you can accept a lot of things. And based on the fact that, again, like you said before, that, and we've talked about this before, of who would doubt what a mother is saying about their child, So, I think about when my best friend told me about her daughter having cancer. I never questioned it, but if it had gone on for, 10 years, I would have been like, okay, Christy, what in the world is going on with your kid? Like, how does she still have cancer? How is she still going through all of this and it not make sense? But that's just me. I guess other people would just accept it at face value.
Well, and I think that actually leads perfectly into the next question we had, which was if that Dr. Falstein, cannot pronounce his
Falstein?
Yeah, Falstein.
No,
Flasterstein.
Flasterstein.
Yes.
That's it. Flasterstein.
Suspected something regarding Munchausen by proxy. Why not follow up? And it also kind of goes along with the following question after that was, how did these doctors get away with not reporting anything or following up on things? And regarding the shaved head thing, DeeDee went in to all these doctor appointments with questions, and if the doctor was not going to do what she wanted, then she found a new doctor who would. So if she wanted a specific medication like Topamax prescribed, and one doctor wouldn't do it, she would go to another doctor who would, because she knew that those side effects from that medication would cause symptoms that would look like a condition she said that Gypsy had.
Yeah, and Flasterstein, I don't blame him.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't blame him. If he had seen her for an extended period of time and he had not done anything, then I absolutely would go ahead and say he messed up, he screwed up. But he saw her 2 times. The first time he wrote down, Mom doesn't seem like a good historian. He did his due diligence. He contacted doctors in Louisiana. He contacted and talked with one that told him that that the muscular dystrophy biopsy actually came back negative, that she did not have muscular dystrophy, that she had been told she did not have muscular dystrophy. So he did his job. He talked to her. He didn't get the records because he never got them from them. They never sent them. And then she only saw him one more time, which was the time that he did indicate that there was Munchausen by proxy. But he sent that letter to her primary care doctor. The primary care doctor did nothing but file it. And then she was pulling there every time she would go to a doctor a visit, she would pull the records, you know, and so she would see that, and she saw it, and she never went back. And so it kind of was out of his hands. Now, we don't know what doctor it was that actually called CPS in and reported it the way that they did. It's been alleged that it might have been Steele, which was her primary care doctor, and maybe that was after him seeing the report from Flasterstein. I don't know, but you know, it's very confusing. The doctors confuse me the most, and that was one of the things we wanted to talk about today too. Was the statement about I always knew I could walk, and we wanted to talk about that as far as the doctor's responsibility in that, because there was several documents that I've personally seen. I know you've looked at the documents more than I have, because I asked you guys to do that because I just don't know exactly what I'm looking at. But it did stand out to me that there were things where a doctor indicated that she had reflexes, normal reflexes, that he had her stand, and he could not explain why she could stand, but she could not walk. And then I think, again, DeeDee didn't go back to that doctor, but that happened over and over again. There are many, many notes about the muscle atrophy not being there. There's no explanation for why she can't walk. And that to me is concerning as to why they didn't look into that. So do you have some thoughts or ideas on all of that, or what should they have done, or, you know?
So like I said, most of the doctors, DeeDee requested that she get all paper copies of all of the records, including the doctor's notes. So currently it's patient my chart, and you can see your general health report, but you don't actually get to see the doctor's handwritten notes versus if you are in the healthcare system and a patient is inpatient or outpatient, and there's a notes tab where it's the actual provider's words and what they said. There's thousands of them. But back when Gypsy was a patient, Epic wasn't a thing. Everything was paper copies. Even currently today, many of these same doctors still use paper charts.
And what's Epic? Just in case anybody doesn't know.
Epic is a online health charting system.
Okay.
That is very, very common. It's kind of taking over the world right now. And there's actually a section called Care Everywhere, which allows you to see patients' records from a different hospital system. If they went, so for example, in Wisconsin, Freighted is a very big provider, as is Aurora, and if a patient came through the Freighted emergency room and got admitted, but they typically see Aurora, you could click in their chart on Care Everywhere and actually see their records and lab results and history from Aurora, even though they're at Freighted.
Okay. I see.
And so back when everything was going on,
that wasn't there.
That wasn't a thing. Doctors couldn't see records from one hospital system from another, especially in the emergency rooms where DeeDee would take her. And
now, even now, it's still not, it's not nationwide, right? It's not.
No, but it's not. We researched some of these physicians and the locations, and some of them still use the paper charts, and don't have the communication from system to system. So when DeeDee would get the records from like Steele and would see those kind of notes, she'd be like, okay, I'm not going to see them for a while. I'm going to go to this different hospital emergency room in the tri-state area. And then if there was something suspicious, so I believe when she saw that suspected Munchausen by proxy comment, I believe that she actually kind of slowed down on her reporting to going to other locations, so that way it didn't draw suspicion to her.
Right.
And then after a couple months, then she went to a different system altogether, so that way they couldn't see that last comment. They would see, oh, she hasn't had any new medications prescribed in a couple months. And like you said, and I've said it before, that doctors and family members and friends, they don't have a reason to not take a mother at her word, especially, and you can see the videos of them, DeeDee and Gypsy, at these foundation functions, and Gypsy saying that my mom is my best friend.
Right.
And if a mom that involved and is trying to take care of her child that's sick, you don't really have a reason to suspect that the child isn't sick, and that this is just a really caring mom, and she's doing so much work to save her daughter's life. And that's how all of the doctor's visits are kind of recorded, because it even says under almost every single condition, per mother's report.
Right. And I don't think that she, like a child that it would be this sick, you would think that the doctors would have like a conference together, and there's no indication that they ever did. Like that really bugs the crap out of me, because you would think that they would all be in, but they weren't. And and it's very weird. That to me is strange. But the thing is like you said, like we've talked about, even with the Epic system, you have to rely on the fact that the information that you're being given to put into the Epic system is correct. And if she's giving you different birth dates and different diagnoses and different things, then it's not going to catch it as if it were just one person doing one thing and it being a consistent story. I mean, it was so layered. I mean,
yes.
The fact of that she would think about the history she would give somebody based on, the family history, based on where she was going. And then it's really funny. Like the other day, I found a document that I hadn't seen yet, that I don't even think you guys have seen. Brandy has been working to upload it for us. It's a 165-page document. And inside of it is actually some of the records from Louisiana that no one ever saw. Like they were just like shoved in this document from the doctor. And it doesn't indicate that the doctor ever even looked at them. Like because there's no notes about looking at them. There's no notes about the information that was included in them. It's like they just got it and a nurse just shoved it in the file and they just went on.
And it's so complicated in paper charts because there's thousands and thousands of pages, especially for a child who's sick. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of pages versus just a couple hundred that a normal one. And like you made a very good point that DeeDee used different birth dates. And that would, when you take a patient to the emergency room and you say, oh, this is Gypsy Blanchard, but her birth date is 3 years different than the last one they gave, and it's a different city, so they don't really know who she is, then they enter that in as a whole new patient. And they get a brand new chart and different folder and different files. And this happened almost hundreds of times.
And then I think she used those in a way, like she would bring those and give them to her primary care or whatever to facilitate what she was saying. Well, I was in the city and she got sick and I took her in and this is what happened and blah. And I really truly believe that she always just told him, oh, they just have that date wrong. I mean, I don't know why they have a different birth date, but they do, and they would just put it in the chart and then just go on and accept it as truth. And no one really looked at that. And that is something that I think definitely needs to be brought to more attention, is that doctors and nurses, they really do need to pay more attention to that. Like, Because I think that should have been a huge red flag for them, and it didn't seem to be at all. No one ever questioned it. Not one single time is there a question of the birth dates being wrong in any of the files. Not one. And there were multiple times the dates were wrong over and over again in one file. So it should have raised a red flag, and it didn't. Now, I truly do believe that some of the doctors knew more than they are telling. There's one doctor specifically that I think had to have had some idea of really what was going on. And I don't know what his reasoning would be for facilitating it, but it really seems like he did. Because his charting itself was heinous. 1 week she'd come in, she'd be 13. The next month she would be 12. Then the next month she would be 14. In his own notes, not just in whatever, in his own notes, he
wrote it.
He wrote many times different things of the story of how she ended up in the wheelchair. He had very many different explanations for it. It had different time periods that it happened. These were his notes. And I just don't understand that. Like, why a doctor would do that is beyond me. But even Tori and I talked about, if there was some sort of fraud going on from the doctors, it's very possible that those type of doctors know other type of doctors that are willing to commit that same kind of fraud. And that could have been happening in this instance too.
Well, right. And the only time in any of the paperwork that the question is from the doctor who said possibly Munchausen by proxy. And he did his due diligence, but then, like I said, DeeDee changed systems. She changed birth dates. She laid low for a couple months, and that's all we have.
Right. And that's one of the things that Titania, that's why she wants the mandatory reporting laws to change in some ways, because he's talked about the fact that he didn't think he would be believed, for one. Two, he had not seen her long enough to really have a comprehensive case to fight, because he would not have had access to all the records, because he wouldn't have known what birth dates to use. And if she never told him about a specific doctor, he wouldn't know to pull it. It's not like he's going to call up every single doctor in the Springfield area and be like, hi, excuse me. Yes, this is Dr. Flasterstein. I'd like to know, have you seen Gypsy Rose Blanchard lately? I don't care when she was born. It could be any of the Gypsy Rose Blanchards ever. No? Okay, click and go through that thousands of times. That's not going to happen.
Well, right, and you have to have the correct birth dates when you call places. Right. You have to have, if you don't know the birth date, you tell me their social. Okay, well, she had different socials. There were so many. It was a layered, like a milkweed, thousands of layers.
Oh, yeah.
It was so wrong.
Right.
And that's when we got another question of why didn't Rod fight more for her? Didn't he leave DeeDee because he didn't want to be with her and didn't fight for custody, seeing that he had other kids? I think that just like the doctors, when Gypsy was young and DeeDee said, oh, she's sick, even though she was manipulative to him, nobody thinks that a mother is going to do these things to their child. And I think that he assumed that, and make a ass out of you and me. And he didn't think that DeeDee was going to do these things to Gypsy, and thought that DeeDee was going to give her
who would
a better life, better. And we also, people say that, oh, Rod was never involved. He wasn't as involved as he could have been, but we do have photos and his efforts that he did try. They did relocate states away, and he did have other kids.
But that was at 14, though, Colleen. In my opinion, I think that, this is where my opinion has changed over time, again, with this, also based on, like I explained in the last video with Titania, my own relationship with my own father and the things that I knew to be true and not true with my dad. But, yes, I know that he was there. There are statements that have been made, though, that people did tell them things were off and they didn't question it. There are times that I think that he should have demanded to go to the doctor's appointments. He should have called the doctors himself. He had every right to do so. There are things he could have done. Now, here's the other thing, though. And I'm not trying to give him a pass, because in my opinion, a shitty dad is a shitty dad. I'm sorry.
Oh,
And
yeah.
any way you look at it, I'm sorry. He was a shitty dad. I'm sorry, he was. And whether he's trying to make up for that now or not is irrelevant.
Yeah, definitely irrelevant.
But here's the thing with him, though. I do believe that he was handicapped in certain ways, in the fact that he worked offshore, so he was gone, 90% of the time. And that was to provide for them, for his own family that he had with Christy, as well as Gypsy and DeeDee. I do believe that she did manipulate him. But I think that he also accepted that. I think that at 17, and even as a young father and having his own life with Christy and everything, I think that it was too much. And he just accepted, oh, she's doing a bang up job. What more can I do? I'm giving money, and I really do think it was do I pick your battles kind of thing? Like,
oh, yeah.
I think that I think he gave up, and I think he just didn't push hard enough. Because there's no indication that he ever tried to fight through the courts for custody. He never got on a plane and went to Springfield after she left and said, I demand to see her. He's never talked about doing anything like that in, even in Louisiana. Was he there for Special Olympics? Sure he was, because if he didn't show up, that would have looked bad for DeeDee too, so she allowed certain things, and yes, she kept him at bay, but I really do feel like that was a choice.
Yes.
It was a choice. He made that choice, and he made that choice not just with her, he made it with another child that he had around the same time, and I really do believe that was a growing up where between having Gypsy and the other child, and then having Dylan, that many years later, I think that there was a growing up part there. And I think about with my own husband, when I was young and we had Sarah, my oldest daughter, I was 21, I was going to be 22 the next month, and he reacted very poorly when they came in and told him all about the epidural and handed him the paper. And he was like, I don't want you getting this. He got really mad. He stormed out. He was angry because he was worried, and he was immature, and he left. The second child was 3 years later. That was a completely different situation with that child. He was like, do you need it, babe? What's going on? How can I help you? What can I do? Totally different, because he had matured in that time period,
Well, right.
From 17 to when Dylan was born, that's a lot of growing up in that period of time.
Right. And Rod and DeeDee, high school, it very mature. Boys mature later than girls.
Well, she was much older.
And I think that I watch a lot of reality television, like trash TV. Between Maury, Steve Wilkos, and I've recently started binging Paternity Court. On a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the best dad ever, Rod's like a 5. Like he wasn't a terrible dad. He wasn't abusive. He wasn't a total absentee parent, but he wasn't great. There are people who are worse. There are people who are better. He was just kind of right in the middle. And I think he felt more relieved when DeeDee wasn't like, you be in my child's life, you marry me, you.
Right. No, she let him off the hook. She let him off the hook, and he was kind of like, oh, thank God. Who wants, let's just be honest. There is no parent in the world, no person in the world that is like, yeah, I want to take care of my sick kid. Woo! Nobody wants that. Nobody is going to feel that way. Even
the Schofields.
Okay. Well, but even DeeDee, you can see it beat up on her. It took a toll on her, even with what she was doing. And yes, she was causing it, but there's nobody that's in their right mind that's like excited about that. And the dads, I'm sorry, dads get let off the hook. They just do. They just do, because moms we do what we do. We're super women. We take care of the children. We do all the stuff we do. We're a guy gets sick and the world comes to an end. A woman gets sick and she continues to take care of the house and the kids and because that's just what we do. It's just in our nature. It's just the roles that we've been put into. And it's not to like I said, it's not to let him off the hook or put him on the hook either way. It is what it is. He has to accept the responsibility. And I think he does in some ways, but I also believe that he's not making an effort to change it either, in the fact that he's not lobbying for her to be in, extreme counseling. I think if the family had lobbied for that sooner, maybe it would have happened. I am upset with the courts for not requiring that. That boggles my mind. I mean, a judge should have absolutely mandated that she get help and be seen with everything that had happened to her. Absolutely, she should have been under that. But again, like I said, I think Rod was like an out of sight, out of mind kind of thing. And I send
very
my
wishy-washy.
I send my money and I've done my best, and that's what it is. And I work offshore, and that was what he felt was his contribution. And you know what? That's the lifestyle down there. The men go offshore, the women stay home. The men are very far removed. The women do almost 90% of the work because they are home. And that is the life that they are taught. And so truthfully, I mean, was he going to be any more really involved, whether she was sick or not? No, probably not.
Well, and the paternity court judge, she is so funny because she said, and it's like stuck with me the last few days, like, mama's baby, daddy's maybe.
Right.
And I have a very tough relationship with my own mom. She left when I was 4. She came back into my life when I was in high school, and it's, it's getting better, but we expect moms to be, the best moms ever. They take care of their kids. They came out of you, they're the ones. And then dads who are very involved, people are like, oh my God, he changes diapers. That's so amazing. And it's like,
no, you just should do that. Like,
you're the dad. You do it. and like, so I've been with my fiance, Tim, since 8th grade. We were 13. We don't have any kids yet. And we had always talked about it. Like, we want to make sure that, we are prepared to have kids and we are ready and plan it out so that way it works with our education. And those things it didn't happen for anybody involved in this case.
Well, and again, I think about the fact of like, of like a guy when they are asked, like a girl, a woman's going to go out and she's going to go grocery shop. She doesn't want to take the kids. Do you know what a guy says? Oh, so you want me to babysit my kids? No, I actually just want you to watch your children. They're your children.
Wait, it's not babysitting.
It's not babysitting. Babysitting is there's another child that doesn't belong to you that you're watching. That's different. This is your child. It's not babysitting. It's just being a parent.
Yep.
I don't know. So, and that's acceptable for that behavior in the society we live in, and it's, I mean, I know I've seen it change some over the course of my life of, now women have careers and women do, have really big careers, not just, working out of the home as a secretary or whatever, like when my mom was young, they have, their corporate careers, their CEOs, their different things. But you know what, even still in all of that, I still see that the mom is still to come home and
the child rearer
and be the child rearer, even if she has a career. And many career, companies have a problem with women who have children because and promoting them through the ranks because they're concerned that that they have to find this work-life balance, this mom-life balance, So I do believe that a lot of that is society and community and the way that we allow dads to just kind of get off the hook for it. There are great dads out there, don't get me wrong, that are very involved and extremely there with the kids and everything. But they are looked at, like you said, as almost like, oh my gosh, your husband changes diapers? Wow, that's so amazing. No, he's just changing a diaper. I do it 9,000 times a day.
Well, and so I'm less than a year away from my nurse practitioner degree. And Tim and I have been waiting to have kids until I was done with school, because I knew that I didn't want to be a stay-at-home mom. I wanted to work, and now I'm teaching nursing, and it's what I want to do. And ever since we were in high school, Tim was like, and he's a social worker. He loves his job.
Right.
But he's like, I want to be the stay-at-home dad. I want to be there with the kids. And so we've waited to have kids until we were financially able to make that happen. Because we didn't want our kids in a daycare or being watched by family members. We wanted it so that I could go out to work, Tim would stay home with our kids because I want 5 of them.
You better get started, girl.
And so it's definitely a society thing, because he was definitely like, you want to stay home? dad, guys don't do that. Guys don't stay at home, dad, Mr. Mom kind of thing. And it's like, no, they want to be like, more guys should do it. It's your kid. If that's the lifestyle you don't want them in daycare, don't force your wife to quit their career. If you want them to stay home, it's a mutual decision. You want to have kids, you make that conversation.
Yeah.
And that kind of goes into the last two questions that we have. See, I'm trying to figure out which one I want to answer first. So somebody asked about the sleep apnea. Follow up. So somebody was asked, was she able to get the equipment Gypsy would have needed? If so, how? I've had sleep apnea and have to do yearly visits for adjustment and to make sure I was actually using the machine properly. If she started out as a 3-month-old, how did doctors who would have done a sleep study not see anything? So to answer that, it's a multiple layer thing again. There should have been more monitoring.
Yeah.
But I think it's entirely based on the medications that Gypsy was given, which can lower her heart rate and respiratory illnesses. Just be more, not comatose, but very lethargic. You get pneumonia easier. And so we don't actually have any records that DeeDee kept appointments that were made with her sleep apnea specialist.
Well, there were there was a sleep study done. There were different things, and there were printouts from her CPAPs that we have, but a lot of them look like the CPAP was on and not being used, and I don't know why that wasn't questioned. I do think there was some times where she answered that it wasn't working properly, and then they got her another one. And if you look at the crime scene photos that we've seen, there are multiple CPAP machines in that house. I mean, they're all over. And one of the things that the family had talked to me about, she lived with her parents when Gypsy was very young when she first got it. And they said that what would happen is Gypsy would be in the crib sleeping just fine. And then all of a sudden, like the CPAP would go off, like alarm would go off that it was having a problem or whatever monitoring system they had. I don't know exactly what what was indicating that. You can probably tell me more of what that is. But what she would do is then they would see her like round the corner out of the room, and then it would cut like she was coming back down the hallway from the other direction as if she had not been in the room. So they thought that she was setting off the machine, but they could never prove that. So they didn't know what to do. And I think a lot of this boils down to the family and Rod and Christy and friends and family. They just didn't know what to do. They expected that the doctors or the nurses were doing their job and they would figure it out if there was something really wrong. And since they didn't, they just didn't know what else to do to question it, because what would you even know what to do? You wouldn't know, And
watch that documentary on YouTube that I said it's a very long one about Munchausen by proxy, and how that one mom, it was a child in the hospital in the NICU. And she was like suffocating her own child to make the alarm go off.
That was one of the things that the expert we talked to the other day was talking about, how they get other people to validate what's going on by creating the situation to happen. She's like, so for instance, her example was if a dad is away at work and she's at home with the child, and she tells him, oh my God, she's been throwing up for 5 days, and he doesn't know because he's not there, So he's like, but honey, she looks just fine. I don't know. I don't see anything. I don't see any vomit. What, she's like, oh, I washed the sheets, but then she'll wait until he is home and go up there with, pea soup or whatever it is, and make it look like she's thrown up. The baby is not thrown up. She throws it all over the crib sheet, and then she screams out, oh my God, come up here, Bob. She's done it again. And then he comes up, he looks around, he looks, oh God, that's gross. Okay, oh my goodness, she has thrown up. This is terrible. Well, what do we do? And then that has now validated it, because when somebody asks him, oh my God, well, did you see her? Yes, I did. I did see it. There was vomit all over her sheets. I don't even know. It was crazy. It was green. It was gross. I didn't look at it. Oh my God. And then that validates it. So exactly like you're saying, she was suffocating him. DeeDee was setting off machines. So I don't know. But yes, I do know there were sleep studies done, but they didn't seem to be very conclusive one way or the other.
Well, and it was per mother's report. Per mother's report. And there wasn't proper monitoring done regarding the CPAP. Having a CPAP on when you don't need a CPAP,
right,
causes its own problems in itself, just like all the hundreds of medications.
It's causing these symptoms that cause the things, and like you said, some of the drugs that she was taking could have caused the symptoms for the CPAP to go off and different things, and so yeah, you're right. And then on top of that, I'll be honest, the person who did the sleep study is the doctor that I suspect had more information and kind of knew what he was doing. And I think that he allowed it to go on because he's the one that had all the shitty reporting in his own reports.
Yep.
So, I mean, you can, if that's the doctor that's monitoring it, then, well, there's always going to be an explanation in his way, you know? And that's, and that was what we when Tori read that file long ago where we were laughing and so frustrated with it, that was one of the things she was actually reading was about the breathing and the CPAP. And he was literally contradicting himself inside his own document. He was talking about the different things that were happening that she could not fake, that he was basically saying, well, this is happening, but I'm ignoring that this is happening. And I'm going to say that this is causing this because she's excited or or she's having a freak out session or blah, 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 or whatever he was saying in there. It was absolutely ridiculous. So he was basically lending, a proof to what wasn't there. Like he was giving the proof without having any reason to give the proof. Like the test showed absolutely nope. And he was like, yeah, okay, this is why the test shows this.
We don't know. It's inconclusive. We don't know.
It's inconclusive. No, it wasn't inconclusive. It absolutely was. No, it's not there. And he went, yeah, I think it could be because of this and this and this and this. So we'll just do another one. And then nothing for months and months and years, you know? Yeah. So yeah.
So the last question we have, which I had a lot of fun looking through our documents about and my own theory on this one, is the glasses. So the glasses. The question is, was she prescribed them? Did she really need glasses, or did DeeDee just find a pair and have her use them? So I love this one. So she did see ophthalmologist. She did have some eye surgeries and procedures and testing. And I think she might have needed a general small script of glasses like all people who have glasses need. But I think my favorite theory on this is this. So we don't know if the glasses that she was actually using were the ones that were prescribed for her, or if they were, my theory here, that she just bought them at Goodwill. Because they are very old, look like they're from the 70s. My dad had like a pair of those in the 80s. And if you go to a Goodwill, you go by the jewelry case, you see a bunch of old people's pairs of glasses. And if anybody has ever had a friend or family member who wears glasses, and you're like, oh, my prescription's really bad, and somebody else is like, oh, I think my script is worse, and then you trade glasses, and you put somebody else's glasses on, it's a splitting instant headache. Everything is blurry. It hurts. And it causes that instant migraine. And I think that her being made to wear glasses that were not made for her eyesight causes eye damage. It causes neurological symptoms. And so it could have even led to her eyes getting worse and worse. And the eye doctors are like, oh, I don't know why it's doing this. We have to do more testing and more procedures on it to correct it. When really it was just because she was wearing glasses that were not for her.
Well, I think the glasses were part of the whole shave the head and the ruse and the whole thing, because let's be honest, those glasses were hideous. And I think that there's no kid that would want those. Like my daughter, if I showed those to my daughter would look at me like I was insane. She'd be like, no, I want pink ones and they need to be cute. And I'd like some sparkles on the side. And, you know, Gypsy did not get those. She got Coke bottle, huge, like, I am just like, you know, worst looking glasses you could ever get, as if, like you said, she walked through a Goodwill and went, "Ooh, those look wonderful. Let me grab those and throw them on her face." You know, do I know whether that happened or not? No. Can I suspect that it might have? Probably. You know, because they definitely are not something that you would have just walked into an eye doctor store, you know, where they sell glasses and seen those. Those would not have been the regular doctor, the glasses that would be there now.
Well, and if you look at the family members, usually needing glasses is a hereditary thing.
Mm-hmm.
If your dad had glasses or needs glasses or contacts,
right,
then you would need them. Or if your mom, or if both of them have glasses, you really are going to need glasses, just like Tim and me. And neither of Gypsy's parents wear glasses.
Right.
And so I think it's started out just...
And I don't think the siblings do either.
No, I think it was just wear these glasses, then it makes your eyesight worse and headaches, and then just take them, do all these eye procedures and surgeries, and then now she has really screwed up eyes.
And see, I think that makes sense. And you can see when you look at her as a child, as a little girl, there is definitely a lazy eye. We know that. And there is definitely some stuff, like I was asking Tori about it because she worked for an eye doctor, and we looked at it, and she's like, no, those are really, that you can't fake some of that stuff. Like that's, you can't fake it. Titania said the same thing. You've said the same thing. But it can be caused by, like you said, wearing the wrong things and everything. And I think about, my daughter Abigail, when she finally got glasses, she had no idea that she couldn't see the things that she couldn't see. Like the doctor literally said to me, I don't know how she sees anything, but she has adjusted to seeing the world this way. And then she put the glasses on and she was like, oh my God, I had no idea all the things that I didn't see in a day, But she had adjusted to living like that without the glasses. And so I feel like it's the exact opposite with Gypsy. Gypsy adjusted to seeing the world through those glasses. And then obviously when she goes to talk to the doctor, she's like, well, yeah, it's blurry. My head hurts all the time. I can't see this. I can't see out of this eye well. And they do the test, and that kind of, now
it
that
validates
you say it validates it because now she's doing the test without the glasses. So then that kind of, her eyes have got to readjust in a way to seeing. And if they don't readjust properly, then those results could have been altered. And I hadn't even considered that before you said this. Because that was one of the things that I had a big problem with, was she had to actively be deciding whether 1 or 2 when you're doing it, and the doctor's like, okay, is 1 better or is 2 better? A lot of times you're like, I don't know. I don't see a difference.
I was just saying.
I'm like, I think 1, maybe 2, I don't know, But I thought she had to actively do that. But if you're thinking about, okay, so she's worn these glasses that she wasn't supposed to wear, which changed how she perceived the world all the time, and then she takes them off and immediately does this test, it would be her eyes being weird and adjusting and trying to figure out, well, what the hell is going on? Because now we don't see it that way. So that would be weird and blurry to her in a totally different way. So now I can see that as a different way of making that test more validated, I don't know.
Well, just like all of the different medications that she was given can, DeeDee reports seizures, but then, she's monitored, she doesn't have any seizures. But she's like, oh no, she had full grand mal seizures lasting a minute at home. And they give her then these medications, neurological seizure medications that she does not need.
Yeah.
That it causes seizures. Just like if somebody who is not ADHD and you give them Adderall, it keeps them very wired, hyper-focused, whatever. But if you give that medication to somebody with ADHD, it actually calms them down. It's the opposite because their body needs that medication.
Right.
And
but however, with the seizures though, Gypsy says she does not ever remember ever having even one.
I think they were probably, if they were ever even documented, they would have been like absent seizures, or you just don't even know. I don't ever think she ever had a grand mal seizure. I think it was just a report. Yes. And I think when all these medications, and if DeeDee wanted her to present with symptoms of conditions that she was reporting to have, she would give her these medications to falsify the symptoms.
And on top of that, Gypsy wouldn't know the difference between a small seizure and a big seizure. Like she wouldn't know, there's just, she would not understand. So her mother's the one that's describing what happened. And I mean, we even have in one of the files where she put her hands over Gypsy's ears to not offend the child, supposedly, and then was like claiming, this happened, that happened, and she's really, she's mentally retarded and all these different things. And so, I mean, like,
it's a lot of lies to Gypsy's lies to mostly doctors. It's a lot of improper communication and manipulation. And when we were talking about the muscular dystrophy earlier, I always like watching that little clip video of Gypsy jumping into the snow pile. And it's like, and then she would tell, oh, she's a paraplegic. One doctor said, oh, she's a quadriplegic. Moron.
Right.
And then she tells friends and family, oh, well, she's not totally paralyzed. She just has weakness. So she's in the chair. And that's why she can move her legs a little bit. And it's
evident in that one that she is creating that. Like,
yes,
you can see the legs move. You can see her stop moving them. You can almost see the realization in her face of, shit, I'm moving my legs and I'm not supposed to. You can honestly see that in her face. Then she picks her legs up and she moves them, and if a doctor had seen all that, I think a doctor would have called her bluff at that point. But doctors don't see home videos, so what would they know? One of the other things that we've talked about repeatedly was whether or not she could sit Indian style. All the times we've seen her sitting Indian style. And there's some different consensus on that as to whether it could or could not happen with somebody who is, got the different things that she has. And some people have said, yes, it could. Other people have said, no, it would be very hard for her. She'd have to hold them there, So, I mean, it just, I don't know. There is so many different things in this that you can look at one document and say, okay, so this is this and that is that. And then you flip the page and you look at another document and you're like, oh, well, shit, that completely blew my theory on that. So now this is this and this is that. Then you go to the next page and you're like, wait, no.
I was right the first time.
I was right the first time. And you can do that over and over and over again. And that was one of the reasons why I was so upset when I asked one of the experts in Munchausen by proxy, was like, he said, he wanted to work with us. Then he said, I can't work with you because I just took on 2 big cases. Let me refer you to another expert. And then when I asked him, I said, well, you've talked a lot about this, so I'd really, really, really like to see, have you done evaluations on it or anything else? And then his answer was, I've never talked to Gypsy. I've never looked at a file. And I was really annoyed by that. Because, and I understand, again, he can talk in the generalist sense of expertise and all the different things that he knows. But then if you listen to them talk, every case is so different of Munchausen by proxy and fictitious disorder imposed upon another. And then one of them, our other expert, she really hit the nail on the head with what she actually thinks it should be called. And that's child abuse and neglect by deceit. And I really felt that was a really accurate idea of how to look at this. But I can't understand how you can talk about it in terms of, well, Gypsy, Dee has Munchausen by proxy, or she has malingering, or da-da-da, and have never looked at any of the files. That blew my mind.
I've been on the case with this organization for now almost 6 months.
Yeah.
And I've spent I don't know how many days in total of hours I spent reading charts, because it's all paper charts. There's no summary by one doctor specifically.
No.
There's thousands of different providers and nurses and doctors and pharmacists and pharmaceutical companies and home care and social workers. Thousands. And so having to sit and read all these documents is a time-consuming process.
It is.
And I think some companies who may have done some documentaries and shows really kind of made it almost impossible for providers and experts to want to talk on the case in fear of being prosecuted or outed or losing patients and money. And they're afraid, because if people know, millions of people watch the act, and they are
It
aware
was so oversimplified in the act.
yes. And if somebody says, oh, Munchausen by proxy, oh, but I don't want to talk about it because now every patient in my neuro clinic knows that who this case is. I don't want them to switch to a different provider because I talk about my opinion on this case.
Right.
And it's made it very, very difficult for people to want to talk about the case in fear of professional ridicule as well as the general public.
Right. In this case is different in the fact that because DeeDee is dead,
Mm-hmm.
it makes it very hard for the experts in that realm of Munchausen's, to really do any type of concrete informational, evaluation, because all of it's based on talking to the parent a lot. A lot of it's based on talking to the parent, then looking at the files. And most of the time they're asked to speak on why a child should be removed or why they think this is Munchausen by proxy. They have to evaluate everything. But in this case, there's no one to evaluate. I mean, you can evaluate Gypsy all you want. That doesn't indicate anything about DeeDee. You can look at the medical files all you want, but it's subjective because you can't pick up a file and look at it and go, okay, so Miss, Blanchard, can you please explain to me why you told the doctor this? Because that's kind of what they specialize in, to my understanding, is explaining why the things happen and how this is different and how this makes this one thing, false, and why this would have been said, and they don't have that,
Right.
So it's another hard thing for them. Like I said, they can talk in general terms, but beyond that, I mean, it's
Right.
very hard to evaluate this case without DeeDee being alive. And I don't believe that there's any question as to whether she has that she did the things she did. That there's no question. Okay, but
to the extent we have been, Gypsy will never forthcome on things that people have questions on. It's just not going to happen.
Nope.
Same with other family members. They're not going to be, and friends, they're not going to be fully forthcoming.
Because it makes them look bad.
Yeah, right. And same with providers. We can get all the medical files we want, but it's not going to be the same as like when we watch the interrogation videos of Gypsy and Nick. It's not going to be the same. That if all the doctor appointments that DeeDee went to were video recorded, that'd be a different story. But we don't. Right. We just have the documents, and that's really all. And home videos of what people have said, but it's all hearsay, and it's just what the case is, and what we have to move forward through is deciphering what is true, what isn't true,
right?
What people really knew and what they didn't know, why decisions were made, what impacted people, what it really drove Gypsy to want her mother dead, and what caused Nick to become the person he is. And that's why by proxy is just one series of the company.
Yeah.
It's just one case. There will be other cases that we talk about. It's murder by design. Why?
Right.
Why it happened.
What happens. And I know that, I mean, and I don't like talking about all the drama and stuff, but I mean, one of our season arc was leaked, by people who obviously should not have done so. It's copyright infringement, but it is what it is. But they are looking at that, and they're looking at it and they're saying, well, the descriptions for each episode was so basic. Well, yeah, because that's just a season arc. That was exactly what it was. It was a basic explanation to an executive who possibly has no understanding of what is or isn't in this case as to what that episode could be boiled down to. Does it really show everything that we've talked about putting in each episode? And that was just the dramatized series. It really absolutely had nothing to do with what the after show would be about, which was more of the in-depth discussions and the panelists and talking to experts and all those different things, and it's been a struggle getting experts to help, not because they don't want to help us, But because a lot of them, like you said, the doctors aren't going to come forward and say anything because they don't want to lose their licenses. And while they can't be sued at this point for malpractice, they still can lose their license because of something that they did. But if the board sees it, they can still lose their license. So the doctors aren't going to come forward. Experts in Munchausen by proxy, like you said, they don't have anybody to evaluate, so it makes it very hard for them to give a real inclusive idea of this case specifically. They can talk in general terms, they can look at different things, they can give their opinions on stuff, but they can't. And then in the autism awareness community, we reached out 2 years ago. We've reached out recently. We do have some autistic people on our staff that are trying to reach out to them. But one of the things that they don't want is they don't want to be associated with autism being an excuse for murder. So,
right, and violence.
Right. And
the whole thing is trying, the autism spectrum is about how people aren't violent, and awareness aspect.
Right.
So they don't want to be associated with this kind of violent crime.
Right. So one of the things that we did to try to get them on board, and they've started to be a little more receptive, thankfully, was explaining that what we wanted to highlight was that it wasn't an excuse for murder. And that's what we wanted them to come on and talk about, so that people could understand that that was not why he killed her. Autism, could he have been manipulated because of autism? Of course he could have. Okay, sure, one way or the other. If you believe that, you believe that. If you don't believe that, you don't believe that. Some people do, some people don't. But is it the reason that he killed her? No. There are many, many, many other reasons involved in why Nick did what he did.
Right. The case of Gypsy is thousands of layers long, but so is Nick. Nick has his own thousands of issues in his background as well.
And see, I didn't see that in the beginning, and that's why I had made a statement a long time ago that was taken very wrong, in the fact of that I said back when we first started this that he was a very small cog in a very large story. And that is true in the fact of the entertainment value. There is not enough information being given about him, or that his mom would participate in, or his dad would participate in, to anybody to do a comprehensive show just about him. Because somebody was asking me about, well, why don't you just why isn't there a comprehensive show about him? I'd like to see a comprehensive show about him and not about Gypsy. There's not enough there. There just isn't, unless you're given all the access to everything. But I also believe that even with being given, even if we were to have a great relationship with Stephanie and Bobby, I don't think that there's enough information in a file about him. I don't think they took him to the doctor enough. I don't think that his mental health was taken seriously. So there still would not be enough in that. Now, based on what we have uncovered with evidence that has happened since he's been in prison, there's a whole nother story there that does make it a bit different. And seeing that has given us the ability to have a more understanding of what he is and how he does play a bigger part in all of this. But truthfully, in all reality, he was the vessel for everything else. Yeah. And truthfully, it all goes back to what the idea behind by proxy is. And we went through many different variations of what we were going to do. And some of the information that's floating out there is from, 2 years ago when we first started, and we thought we were doing this one thing. And then through evidence, we found other things and decided to kind of change a little bit. And focus specifically on DeeDee being the main character. Because if you look at everything that happened, it was all because of DeeDee. If you want to look at Christy and Rod, she created that. If you want to look at the family, it's all about that. If you look at Titania and the friends, it's all going back to DeeDee. If you look at Gypsy, it goes back to DeeDee. If you look at Nick, it goes back to DeeDee. So any which way you look at it, it's about DeeDee. It's DeeDee. And that's what the path of what our show is showing is. And, do we have to piece it together bit by bit? We have, we've taken stories. And the thing is that, think back to my husband talking about a comedian we had watched had said something about the fact of somebody can't say the same thing about somebody for 20 years and it not have some truth to it. Like Whitney done smoked her kneecaps off and people are still saying Whitney Houston didn't do drugs. Guys, Whitney Houston did drugs. Let's just be honest. She did. And you can't say something like over and over and over again, and 20 different people can't say this almost exact same thing and there not be a vessel of truth in that. And that's been what we've been trying to put together is, when I talk to Titania, I write everything down and I sit down and I think about it. Then I go and I talk to Suzette about it and I ask her, and then I go and ask a couple other people that knew her when she was this age, and then I ask the family, hey, do you have anything to elaborate on this? And then I come to a conclusion of what I can believe, is believably what happened.
Well, even if DeeDee was still alive,
we wouldn't have truth.
But it wouldn't be true.
It wouldn't be truth.
It's just, she wouldn't tell us the truth. She wouldn't tell anybody the truth. This would be a moot point because, yes, she's dead, but if she was alive, she wouldn't be telling the truth either. Mm-hmm. So that's why we have so many different experts on different fields on our team to come together to formulate these opinions based on all different types, whether it's psychological, criminology,
right,
family friend, medical, somebody totally unrelated to the case to take a fresh point on it. It's coming together, looking at everything we do have, and formulating what is more than likely true regarding.
And that was why the dramatized series, we started off with just wanting to do the dramatized scripted series. Then we decided that even if we did the dramatized scripted series, we would never be able to tell all the truth, all the stories, all the perspectives. So we would look at it in three ways. We started off with dramatized series and then the after show. The after show has become even more apparent that it needs to be done than the dramatized series. I like dramatized series, so I'm still going to do the dramatized series because I feel like some people won't watch the after show because that's just not their thing. Some people do, some people don't. So I want to try and get as much information as I can into the dramatized series. But in some ways, we'll even in our after show talk about why we made the choice to put what we did in the dramatized series based on what it was we were looking at. And that's kind of what we're really trying to do with all of this, in addition to the two podcasts we're doing. First we're going to do the Good Wives Guide to True Crime. Now that's going to be a very, in-depth,
much more lighthearted.
It's lighthearted. It's going to be discuss the case over 3 days. And we will do some different, hard stuff on there, but it's going to be a more lighthearted look. And then there's going to be one that we do before that, that's dedicated to more like what you saw with A Dirty John, where it was very informational and facts and interviews and things like that, and put all of that in there right before we come out with the full series and the after show. And then the series and the after show will come in together, So I think that it's without all those parts, though, no one's ever going to have a real understanding of anything that could be truthful because it's so skewed.
Yeah.
And so you have to do, the one piece and then talk about why you made the choices to do the one piece, and then let the experts talk about what we talked to them about, because even still there will be questions. Do I think that a lot of questions will be answered through all of this? Yes. Do I think that everyone will ever have the full truth? No.
It's just not going to happen.
It's just not going to happen. I wanted it to happen. It's just not going to.
Right. The truth's never going to come out about this. There's too many guys. There's too many people who don't even know what the truth was.
Right.
Or is.
And even so, like, there's always three sides to every story. There's her side and my side, and then there's the actual truth of what happened. But when you're dealing with so many people in all of this, perception is so skewed on it, And so our idea is to try and put all of that together in a way that we can go, okay, well, here's everything we've heard. And now you have all the information that you could possibly have about it. You're going to have to make your own decision. It's just like today when I did, we're starting on going into the Conrad Roy, Michelle Carter case, which is our next thing. And I put up a post today and I was like, what do you guys think about it? I gave no information about what I thought about it at all. And a lot of people were like, are you serious? Or why are you even asking this? And then when I finally said, guys, this is a new project that I want to work on, and I'd like to know what your questions and opinions are, people started saying different things. And I was reading it going, wow, I can totally see how people have no real understanding of what they're even saying because they've not seen the whole thing, and I've seen parts of it. I still have a lot of questions. And again, that's what we're going to look at is why, how, and not the what, you know, because that was a very sad situation where both those kids were mentally disturbed and needed help and didn't get it. And that's another case where we want to talk about what caused all of that to happen. How did we end up on a day with a kid committing suicide, you know, and how did a girl get dragged into that? Like, so that's honestly what our whole series is about, is trying to shift through all the information that is involved in these cases that we cover and finding out how did we get where we got
we
to.
are.
Yeah.
And I'm super excited.
Me too.
It's getting so good. It's going into a very good direction and a good place. And I love working with this team, with great staff.
And I love that our team can, I love that our team can debate and say to each other, I think you're full of shit. Like, real, I don't believe that at all. I don't believe that at all.
I loved that little side rant. I'm in my own corner on that case.
Yeah, but even the case, Gypsy's case, I mean, there have been many times that I've said something and somebody goes, nope. And there's been times where you've said something and I'm like, Colleen, I don't believe that at all. Let me show you this document over here, because that's going to totally negate what you just said right now. And you look at it and you're going, oh shit, you're right. You're right. You're right. Okay, so you're right. I totally was wrong there. And then, 5 minutes later, you can come back, but wait a minute. So now that we've got that, what about this? So that's what we've done for people have asked why it's taken 2 years. First of all, I was trying to do it all by myself originally. I realized that there was way too much information for me to do by myself, brought on several different people that started off a long time ago. But in the last 6 months, I mean, there's been so much discovery that we have done. We could not have done this 2 years ago. We needed to wait. And I'm sorry, it's just going to take the time that it takes, and that's what it's going to be. And so, but thank you guys for tuning in tonight. This has been a long extended call with Colleen, but it's been fun and I enjoyed it. Make sure that you check out our other social medias. We are on Instagram at By Proxy Series. We are on Facebook at By Proxy Series. And then we just started our own Patreon account. So if you'd like to support us in our journey, what we're doing with this our researchers have been working for a long time without getting paid. We'd like to pay them. We would love to get better equipment so that we can have microphones and things like that, allow us to have a better quality intro, a better quality everything for you guys. So that's kind of what you're helping to support by doing the Patreon. We are having our podcast edited, the trailer that we just did, so that will come out. And then as we start into the podcast, you'll get free extra podcasts. Well, not free, but I mean, inside the Patreon account, you'll get, depending on what level you're at, you can get early release of podcasts. You can get extra miniature podcasts that we won't put out to the public. You'll get live videos and discussions and things like that. So it's a lot of great stuff that you can do in the Patreon account. And that is www.patreon, which is patreon.com, True Crime Wives, with an S on the end. So if you'd like to, we have a $1 membership all the way up to a $25 membership, depending on what you want to do. And even if you want to pick one of the higher ones so that you get the merch, there's a lot of merch involved. You can always, after you've done that, go back down to a lower tier, because a lot of our things in the higher tier are mostly because of merchandise that you're getting. So if you want to get a t-shirt, it's going to cost you more. But anyway, please join us, and hopefully this will come out on Sunday. And we try to put something out on the YouTube channel every Wednesday and every Sunday. I have been uploading things from the past periodically between those things, but definitely on Wednesdays and Sundays. So have a good one, guys. Thanks, Colleen. Bye.
Bye.